Hello everyone, my name is Abhishek and welcome back to my channel. Today is episode 2 of Azure Zero to Hero series, and in this video we will understand how to create an account with Microsoft Azure. What are the different types of accounts Microsoft Azure provides? Can we create an account without using credit card or debit card? And then we will deep dive into the concept of regions and availability zones in Microsoft Azure. Finally, we will understand one of the very important concepts, the difference between IaaS, PaaS, and SaaS models in Azure. So Azure supports all these models. So we will try to understand as a DevOps engineer, what is the clear difference between these models. So this is what we are going to learn in today's video. So please watch it till the end. Now, before I start explaining how to create an account with Microsoft Azure, I quickly want to say that we are going to maintain this particular GitHub repository throughout this series. So like you see, day 1, day 2, we are going to create folders till day 25. And in each day, there will be MD files, which provides you detailed notes of the topics that I have covered in that particular video. So here you can see regions, availability zones, and IaaS, PaaS, and SaaS. Of course, these MD files will not have the complete details that I'm talking about, but they will help you for revising the concepts after watching the video. So please start this repository so that you will get updates whenever I make changes to the documentation. And second thing is, if you haven't watched day 1, please watch day 1, because in day 1, I have covered the fundamentals of cloud concepts. This is very much important to understand any cloud platform. It can be AWS, Azure, or GCP. The fundamentals that I've covered in this particular video are prerequisites to learn any platform. Let's proceed with creating an account. Just search for Microsoft Azure and click on the first link that you see. Click on try Azure for free. And then you have two options, start free. Second option is pay as you go. Do not select this option. Click on start free because we want to create a free account with Microsoft Azure. And throughout this series, we will use the free account as much as possible. Now there is an option to sign in into Microsoft Azure. There are different ways, but the best one is to sign in with GitHub. So click on sign in with GitHub. Now you might say that, Abhishek, I don't have an account with GitHub. It is very important to create an account with GitHub, not just for this particular login, but these days maintaining a GitHub profile adds so much to your profile. So it's very simple. Just search for GitHub login and click on this option, sign in into GitHub, create an account. It's very simple. GitHub asks you for very basic details. You just have to provide the email address and couple of more details. Your account with GitHub is created. Now, once the account with GitHub is created, now just come to the username section, provide your GitHub username or the email address, and then provide the password. I have two-factor authentication enabled. So GitHub definitely asks me to authenticate with password as well as a OTP that is sent to me. So now I will just submit the OTP. So I have authenticated and now I am signed in to Microsoft Azure. Click on yes. And as soon as you do that, Microsoft Azure provides you with this particular interface where you can see what are the things that you get with a free account. So with a free account, you get most of the popular Azure services free for the first 12 months. Along with that, there are 55 plus services that you get for free. So you get most of the popular services that you use as a DevOps and cloud engineer. Along with that, there are some 55 more services that you get for free. Now you might wonder, but Abhishek, I want to do some real-time projects on the Azure platform. And I know that the free services that are provided by Azure platform, they come with a restriction that you can only use this much of virtual machines or this much capacity, but I want to practice real-time projects. Don't worry, Microsoft Azure also provides you 13,300 Indian currency for free for the first 30 days only. After that, you will not get this free credits. So you can consume all of these free credits for the first 30 days. If you are in the US region, you get $200 free credits. I'll talk about what are these popular services, what is covered under the free tier and what is not covered under the free tier. So don't worry about that. And whenever I do a project also, I'll try to say if that project incurs cost for you. Then you have to just agree to some subscriptions and agreements. So click OK for the first one, but second one where Microsoft requests you if Microsoft can share your information with the partners, I would not prefer that. So click on the next button. And here Microsoft again is telling you about the free tier that, for the first 30 days only you get this free credits. After that, if you want to use beyond this particular free services, you will be charged. Of course, you will be charged only with your consent. If you don't give the consent, Microsoft Azure won't charge you. So I'll talk more about that. As I told you, whenever we do projects, I'll explain you if that incurs some cost. Now provide your card information. So this is what I was talking about. So there are two different accounts that you can create with Microsoft Azure. Now the one that I'm creating is asking for the credit card or debit card because I'm not a student. Microsoft Azure also has something called as student account. So just search for student account Microsoft Azure. So it comes with Azure for students. And here you can create an account without using credit card. So it clearly mentions no credit card required. What you need to do, just search for Azure for students and click on start free. And one criteria is, you might say that, but Abhishek, anybody can sign in as a student. The thing is, you have to provide your school address, that is your college or school email address, and that has to be authenticated. So Azure provides you, Azure sends you a token and you have to verify that. Only then Microsoft Azure allows you as a student. So you have to have a genuine email address. If your college is not providing the email address, then we cannot do anything because Microsoft Azure requires that as a prerequisite. And there is another option where if you have a coupon that is shared with you by any Microsoft Azure team members or someone from Microsoft Azure, you can also do that. But I have personally not tried that. So I'm only aware about these two options. One is the student way. Second one is the one that I'm doing where credit card or debit card is required. So let me provide quickly the details. Of course, I will blur the screen here. Then click on sign up. Here, the card that you're providing has to be accepted by Microsoft Azure. If your card is not accepted, again, you cannot do anything. Only if your card is accepted, then you will get an OTP to authenticate. So Microsoft Azure again charges you $1 or $2 if you are in the US and 1 or 2 rupees if you are in the India region. And depending upon the country that you are in, so you can assume that you will be charged very less in your currency, and that amount is also refunded back. Don't worry, once your authentication is perfect, if you have provided legitimate details, then the account is created, Microsoft Azure account is created, and you will get the refund as well. So in my case, I have provided all the required details. I have provided my debit card. And now I'll just agree to the first one, click on the next button. And I agree to the terms of Microsoft. So if your account is created successfully, you will see this particular thing called you are ready to start with Azure. Click on go to Azure Portal, and this is your Azure console. So this is your dedicated Azure console that you have created with your Azure account. And like I told you, you can read through this particular tutorials that Azure provides you, but it is not required because I will anyways cover most of the required things. So you can just click on this blue button that you see, Microsoft Azure. So this is your Azure landing page. And in today's class, what's important to understand is just create an account with Microsoft Azure. If you are interested, you can explore the services. You can explore by clicking on more services. So there are between 150 to 200 services that Microsoft Azure has at this point of time. So you can see that for AI, that is artificial intelligence, Microsoft Azure has 22 services. For analytics, it has 21 services or resources. For compute, Microsoft Azure provides 36 different types of services, containers, databases, anything that you want to use, you can use using the Microsoft Azure portal. I will cover all the things that are required for DevOps engineers, so don't worry about that. So this is what you have to do with respect to account on day one. And one thing you have to understand is what is provided in free and what is charged. You get 13,500 in the Indian currency for free, where even if you do the projects that I'm going to explain, that will be deducted from that particular amount for the first 1 month. After that, don't worry about that. If there is any charge that is going to incur, I will definitely explain that. If you want to understand even more, just search for Azure free services and click on see all free services. Here Azure provides in the tabular format. Just search for the service that you want. Let's say you want to use the Kubernetes service on Azure. So you will just come here and search for Kubernetes. So here Azure says it is free, not just for 12 months, but anytime that you use Kubernetes on the Azure platform, it is completely free. Of course, when Azure says it is completely free, you cannot create Kubernetes cluster with 100 nodes and all. So there are restrictions that I will talk about when we deal with that particular service. Let's deep dive into regions and availability zones. So in the last class, I have explained that Microsoft Azure is a public cloud provider, and similar to any public cloud provider, even Microsoft Azure has multiple data centers spread across the world. This is what I've explained in the last class, where I said Microsoft Azure might have bunch of data centers in the US. They might have a couple of data centers in India, Australia, Africa, Singapore, and let's say multiple data centers in the Europe region. But the first question that you should ask me is, Abhishek, why are these data centers spread across the world? In last class, you told me that Azure has millions of users. So obviously one data center, which is collection of servers, cannot handle request of millions of people. So they have created multiple data centers, and in each data center, they have like thousands of servers. But why are these data centers not located in one particular region? Like if say Microsoft Azure has 100 data centers, right? Why can't these 100 data centers just exist in India region? Or why can't these 100 data centers just be set up in the US, right? So the answer to this question is latency. What is latency? Let me explain with a simple example. Let's say I am a startup founder and I have customers in France, Germany, and Italy. If Microsoft Azure does not have their data centers across the world, and let's assume all of their data centers, that is all of their 100 data centers, are in the India region. Now, my customers are in France, Germany, and Italy, but Microsoft Azure has their data centers only in India. So I have to deploy my application in the one of the servers in India region. So whenever customers from France or Germany or Italy If they want to talk to the application, the request has to travel from one of these countries to India, and application has to send the response back again to the customer. So there is a lot of travel, right? Of course, the servers are connected to fast cables. Of course, there are protocols that transfer data very quickly, but still this includes in certain amount of delay, because the packets or the data has to travel for a long distance. So that involves in certain amount of delay, which is not accepted in today's world. Today, if Instagram takes time to respond, we will not accept that. Or if any application takes time responding or sending a response back to you, that is not an expected behavior. And this delay in the internet terminology or networking terminology is called as latency. So to avoid this latency, what Microsoft Azure does is they split their 100 or X amount of data centers across the world, so that if I have customers in France, Germany, and Italy, I will create or deploy my application to one of the servers in the Europe region. Let's say there is a startup where they have customers only in the US region. They will deploy their application to one of the servers in the US region. Similarly, you will pick up one of the data centers or one of the regions that is close to where your customers are, right? This is the reason why the data centers are spread across the world. And each data center is nothing but an availability zone, right? So we call data center, but in the public cloud terminology, data center is nothing but an availability zone. Now, what is a region? You might ask me this question. So let me explain very simply. So let's pick up one of these things. Let's pick up US, right? So now we understood that Microsoft Azure has multiple data center in the USA region. What if Microsoft Azure has 10 data centers and all of the 10 data centers is set up in one particular part? Let's say there is a place called Alaska or Florida, and Microsoft Azure has set up all 10 data centers in just Alaska or Florida region. And for some reason, what happened was, probably there is a natural calamity that has taken place, or there is a electricity short circuit, or there is an earthquake, or any kind of thing that has happened, and there is lack of power supply, electricity supply to this particular place where the data centers are located. What will happen? All the people who have deployed their applications into the USA servers of Microsoft Azure, they will face downtime. And downtime is even bad compared to latency, because downtime means the applications are not at all accessible. So what Microsoft Azure does is they came up with a concept that, okay, we have multiple data centers. We have decided to create multiple data centers. So let's do this strategically, right? So Microsoft Azure said, we will do it very strategically, where we will try to split the entire things into regions, where let's say this is US. So Microsoft Azure said that we will split US into two parts, and let's call it as US West and US East. And instead of deploying all the data centers in one particular place of the US, let's set up like 3 data centers isolated from each other in the US West region. And now I'm just making up these numbers. Don't take them too seriously. There might be 2, there might be 3, there might be 5. And in the US East region, again, let's set up 3 data centers, which are split, let's say 300 miles from each other or 200 miles from each other, so that what happens? For some reason, even if the complete US East region goes down, still you have US West region. So customers in the US, they will not face downtime because the US West is available. Similarly, if US West goes down, US East is available. So this is one region and this is another region, right? So using this concept, what Microsoft Azure does is they will avoid one, latency, two, downtime, which are very critical factors. In today's world, latency is not accepted and downtime is not accepted. So Microsoft Azure splits the entire data centers into regions. So in India, let's say this is in India, right? If they want to set up 3 to 4 data centers, what they will do is they will split India into multiple regions, right? And they will set up one data center probably here, one availability zone or two availability zones in this particular region, and one or two availability zones in a different region. Let's move to the final topic for today. That is IaaS, PaaS, and SaaS. So what exactly is IaaS, PaaS, and SaaS? And what is the difference between these models? Let me explain that. For that, let's quickly go back to the Microsoft Azure console. And here you can see that Azure provides a lot of services, and these services are categorized. Like this bunch of services are called as AI services or AI resources. These are called as analytics. These are called as compute. Let's say you want to just take a virtual machine from Azure. So you can just go to this particular service and request for creation of a virtual machine. So Azure asks you for a bunch of details and you'll get the virtual machine. Similarly, let's say you want a database. So you can go to this SQL databases service, request for a database, and you'll get it. Let's say you want a storage. You just need a storage. So you can come here and you can request for X amount of storage and type of storage from Microsoft Azure. So the whole thing is that Microsoft Azure offers a wide range of services. Now it is up to you what you want to take from Microsoft Azure, right? So just because Microsoft Azure provides a storage service, if I don't need a storage service, I'll not take the storage service from Microsoft Azure. Let's say Microsoft Azure provides databases as services, but if I don't need, I will not pick up that, right? So this entire thing can be understood like Microsoft Azure services and the offerings can be categorized in 3 different models. One is infrastructure as a service model, right? What is IaaS? Infrastructure as a service. Then the second model is platform as service. And the third model is software as service. Now it is up to you in which model you want to use Microsoft Azure. Abhishek, but what exactly is infrastructure as service? In simple terms, if you want to buy or if you want to use infrastructure from the Microsoft Azure platform, example, virtual machine or storage or anything related to networking. So if you want to take these services from Microsoft Azure, that means you are using Microsoft Azure in the infrastructure as a service model, right? But let's say you want to use beyond that, right? In some cases, you just want to just use a virtual machine from Microsoft Azure. And on top of this virtual machine, you will install your application. You will install all the required softwares. And finally, you will run the application on the virtual machine. This is the IaaS model, where you are just taking virtual machine, storage, networking from the Microsoft Azure. And on top of it, you are installing the softwares that are required to run your application and load balancer, whatever you need. This is the IaaS model. Other than that, there is a model called platform as a service model. In this model, what companies do is they will not just take the infrastructure, but they will pick up the complete platform. For example, databases, right? One way companies can do is they can buy storage, virtual machine, and on top of that, they can install database and they can configure database. But what Microsoft Azure says is, okay, you don't even have to do that. We have database offering, like I have shown you. You can just go to Microsoft Azure and request for MySQL database. And if you are directly taking this kind of services from the Azure platform, that means you are directly using their platform, and this model is called as platform as a service. Again, I will repeat, very simple difference between IaaS model and PaaS model. If you take the same database as an example, if you just take virtual machine, storage, networking from the cloud provider and install MySQL database on top of it. Of course, this has an operating system, but let's say you install MySQL database and you configure this MySQL database by your own, then that means you are only picking up these services. That's why you are using Microsoft Azure in the IaaS model. That is infrastructure as a service model. You are just taking their infrastructure and using it as a service from Azure. On the contrary, if you take the same example, instead of doing all of these things, right? Instead of installing MySQL and configuring it, and instead of just taking these things from the Azure, what you can also do is just go to the Azure platform and search for SQL or MySQL database offering and just directly use their SQL offering, where you don't even procure VM, you don't even procure storage or networking. Directly you pick up their MySQL service. And this model is called as platform as a service model. Here, all that you need to do is you get your MySQL database installed. You just have to configure it, right? Probably you have to import your tables, you have to import your data, and you have to start using. Then there is another model called SaaS model, where the SaaS model is software as a service. Now, in the SaaS model, you don't have to do even that, right? When it comes to SaaS model, you will directly get the platform infrastructure and you will also get the service. You don't even have to configure anything. For example, email services, right? So Microsoft has, let's say, the email services like Outlook. So if you are taking Outlook, this is the best example for software as a service model, where you don't have to do anything with it, right? You don't even have to configure. When configure, I mean, you might have to configure it for your personal preferences or something, but you don't deal with anything like the configurations, detailed configurations of Outlook, right? What you do is you just start using Outlook. This model is called as a software as a service model, where you don't deal with deployment of application, configuration of application. All that you do is you get this Outlook as a service, and Microsoft will say that, okay, I will charge you, let's say $100 for 10 users for 1 month, and you will get everything. You just have to send emails, receive emails. That's the only thing that you have to do, right? So this is the difference between IaaS, PaaS, and SaaS model, right? IaaS, PaaS, and SaaS model. So if you are only dealing with infrastructure with Microsoft Azure, then that means you are using Azure in the IaaS model. If you are dealing with platform directly, best example, SQL databases or app services. So Microsoft Azure has something called app service, which is another best example where you are using Azure in the PaaS model. And if you are using services from Azure such as Outlook, then you are using the software as a service model, because here you don't do anything from your side. You just pay the subscription amount and you start using that particular service. In platform, you get the platform, you have to tweak or configure the platform. So you have to do bunch of configurations to start using it. Whereas in the infrastructure as service model, You will just get the infrastructure that can be VMs or storage, and you have to install the required runtimes. You have to install the required softwares to run your application, and finally you have to deploy your application by yourself. So this is IaaS versus PaaS versus SaaS. So do let me know in the comment section if you have understood these concepts, and if you have any questions further, you can ask me in the comment section and I will try to reply to my best possibility. Thank you so much for watching today's video. See you all in the next video. Take care.